Hello and welcome back to another episode of the DIYguy.net. Alright, today we're going to show you how to fix a Maytag top-load washer that seems out of balance or shakes while in spin cycle. If this is the first time it's happened to you, try checking and rebalancing the load within there. Make sure your towels and jeans all on one side and the lighter items on the other. If it happens multiple times, or like in this case, we'll show you in the next part of this video, with the machine actually empty and still shaking around, then there are two culprits you're going to want to look at, which is going to be a worn snubber ring and your 6 suspension springs. So this is going to be on a Maytag Performa washer. This should work for other Maytag models as well as Whirlpool. Alright, so next what we need to do is lift the top of the wash machine up. There's a pin right here and a pin right there, a clip. What we need to do is depress that clip and lift up a little bit and pop it loose. I like to use a plastic putty knife. You can use a flat screwdriver as well. So we'll go ahead and push it in there, lift the machine lid up. Go ahead and do the same thing on the other side and it'll pop free. We'll go ahead and lift that up and lean it against the wall. If you're too close to the wall, you may need to move the machine out a little bit so you can lean it up there safely where it won't fall on you. If you can have someone else hold it open for you while you're working on it as well. Alright, so next we need to remove these two screws that hold the front panel or washer cover in place. We can use a flat screwdriver or a 5/16 nut driver. We're going to use the 5/16 nut driver, so we'll go ahead and remove those two screws so we can remove the front panel. With those two screws removed, we can let the panel lean forward. Then we'll go ahead and lift up on it to remove it. Once we have it removed, we can go ahead and set it aside. Alright, so as you can see, we have it in spin. There's nothing inside of this washer. And as you can see, it is bouncing around pretty good. So what causes it to shake around while it's in spin is if you got clothes in it, obviously make sure your load is balanced. But like this one, we have nothing in it. So what normally causes it is a worn snubber ring. There's a ring between the base plate and this black piece here. It's kind of what the washer kind of articulates on and moves around on. So those wear out, and that's what you can see is worn in this one here, as we got a lot of white pieces of filings from it. You can actually see that the washer was starting to rub on the base plate here, leaving some marks. And also these 6 suspension springs here also get worn and fatigued too. That's what we're going to show you how to replace today, is that snubber ring. And we're also going to replace these 6 suspension springs as well. If you get down here and you see one of your suspension springs is broken, replace them in a full set so they can wear in together and you'll have the same tension on all points of the drum. But we're going to replace both the snubber ring and all the suspension springs. Alright, so next we'll go to the back left of the machine. You'll find this rubber tube or hose. We'll go ahead and follow that down to where it meets our drum. We'll go ahead and squeeze the hose clamp with our fingers and then pop off the hose. That goes to our pressure switch so the washer can tell how much water is in the drum. So we need to remove that, so we're going to remove the whole drum assembly from the cabinet of the washer. Alright, before we can remove the drum from the washer, we need to remove the motor. So we'll go ahead and undo the wire for the ground right here. There's a 5/16 bolt here and here, so we'll go ahead and grab that 5/16 nut driver or a flat stubby screwdriver. Go ahead and remove these 2 screws that hold the splash guard or cover over the top of our motor. Once we get those 2 screws removed, we can just lift up and slide that plastic cover out of the way. Alright, now that we have that cover removed, you'll see right here is a ground screw that goes through the motor bracket. We're going to go ahead and grab a 1/4" nut driver to remove that. So we can remove the ground wire from the motor bracket, as the motor and bracket will come out together. Alright, now that we got the ground wire removed, we can go ahead and undo our wiring harness off the motor. We're just going to squeeze on each end, the little squeeze clips, towards the center of the wiring, and go ahead and wiggle the wiring and it should pop right off. We'll go ahead and let it just sit down beside the motor. Next we can grab a 3/8 ratchet, a 6-inch long extension, and a 3/8 socket. We're going to use those to remove the 2 3/8 bolts that hold the washer motor bracket to the washer base. Once we get those bolts removed, we can go ahead and push the washer motor and bracket towards the center of the machine or towards the tub. We're going to tip it at a 45-degree angle or so and then remove it. That way we can undo the belt and remove the motor all at the same time, saving us a step of lifting the washer up and undoing the belt. Alright, with the motor removed, we can go ahead and move on to removing the 6 suspension springs. You can use a pair of vice grips for this. They do make spring pliers made to remove these springs, but we're just going to use the vice grips because we don't have a set of those handy. So what we're going to do is just get them on nice and tight onto the top portion of the spring. We'll go ahead and lift up and unhook the top part. To wiggle out the bottom part, you want to rotate it to the elongated side in the base plate and then just rotate the spring right out. So we'll go ahead and repeat the process, doing the same thing, lifting each spring up, getting the top part unhooked, and then rotating it the right direction and removing it from the base of the washer. Alright, now that we have those 6 suspension springs removed, we can tip the washer drum over and we'll see this hose here that goes from the washer drum to the washer pump. What we're going to need is a set of channel locks or pump pliers. We're going to squeeze that top clamp and remove the hose from the drum assembly. Now this hose will have some water in it, so it's a good idea to throw some towels in there to soak up the water, especially if your washer is in a place where you don't want to get the floor or subflooring wet. Once we have this hose removed, we are ready to remove the drum assembly. So what we're going to do is just lift up on the whole drum assembly through the top of the washer until the transmission pulley makes it out of the base plate, and then we're going to pull the transmission pulley side and go out through the front of the washer cabinet and or frame. Once we get the washer tub assembly out, we're going to go ahead and flip it upside down so the transmission pulley is facing up. Alright, so now that we have the drum assembly removed from the washer cabinet, you'll notice these 6 screws going around right here that hold the snubber ring in position. Now this also has 200 pounds of braking force as it does our braking for the washer. So we cannot remove all of them at once. We need to remove every other one to make a triangle shape. We're going to replace those 3 that we removed with 10/24 inch and a quarter long screws. That way we do not lose the braking force when we remove the other 3 screws to be able to replace the snubber ring. So we'll grab a 5/16 nut driver, remove every other screw. We should be removing 3 of them to make a triangle shape. Alright, so this is what you should have. A screw there, screw missing, screw there, screw missing, a screw here, and not a screw there to make a triangle pattern. As you can see, this snubber ring is pretty worn. There are a lot of filings or shavings from the snubber ring. And like I said, it was also causing it to wear onto the washer base because it was shaking so much. Alright, next we can grab the longer 10/24 inch screws. What we're going to do is start those by hand in the holes of the 5/16 bolts that we just removed. Once we have them all started by hand, we can go ahead and grab a Phillips head screwdriver in this case, and we'll run them in about halfway. Once we have those Phillips screws halfway in, we can go ahead and grab the 5/16 nut driver and remove the other 3 factory screws from the metal plate. Putting those longer screws in allows us to lift this metal disc and remove the snubber ring while still holding tension on our brake assembly. So we'll go ahead and lift the metal ring, grab onto the snubber ring, and wiggle it on out. You may use a flat screwdriver if you need to, or if yours is in 2 pieces. As you can see, this one was just starting to separate into 2 pieces. Next, we can grab a rag and we'll clean out the area where the new snubber ring is going to sit. As you'll see, we also put a screwdriver within the rag to help us reach underneath the metal bracket. With the area clean, we can go ahead and unpackage our new snubber ring and drop it in position. We want to wiggle it around and make sure it is centered in there. Once we get it centered, we'll go ahead and let the metal plate rest on top to hold it, pinch it in position. We'll go ahead and grab those three 5/16 bolts. We'll install them into the holes that are already removed and open. We'll go ahead and run those down hand tight and then snug them up with our 5/16 nut driver. Once we have those tight, we go ahead and grab our Phillips head screwdriver in this case and remove our longer 10/24-inch screws and replace them with the 5/16 factory bolts. We'll go around and double check to make sure they're all nice and snug. Next, we'll grab a rag and we'll wipe down the base plate in the center where the snubber ring is going to come in contact with it. We want to make sure this is nice and clean. That way the snubber ring does not fail prematurely. Once we have that area clean, we're ready to set the drum assembly back inside the washer cabinet. There are some technicians that add a layer of cornstarch around the center where the snubber ring is going to come in contact with the base plate. I don't know if this helps with friction or if they do it to wick up the moisture and oils. If you're one of the technicians that do, please let me know why in the comments below. With our base plate clean, we're ready to reinstall our drum assembly. We're going to go ahead and face it the right way with our dispenser here in the front left corner. We're going to lower the top half in. We'll go ahead and reach through the top of the cabinet and pull upward on the drum assembly. We'll go ahead and lower the transmission pulley down through our base cabinet here. We'll go ahead and give it a wiggle to make sure it doesn't bind on anything and it's kind of centered in there. And then we're ready to connect everything else up. So we'll start by reconnecting the hose from our washer pump to our tub assembly. We'll go ahead and wiggle it in position, get it on that nipple, and then we'll go ahead and use our channel lock pliers to slide up our hose clamp to make sure it's properly secured and we don't have a leak. Alright, now that we got our hose connected, the hose clamp's on there and it's nice and snug, we can go ahead and open our 6 suspension springs. We'll want to open them up, compare them to our old ones, make sure they are the same length. Then we'll go ahead and install them all in the base plate. Then we'll grab our vice grips and go ahead and stretch them out and connect them back to the tub. I like to start in the back as those are the hardest to reach, and then work my way around towards the front. Now that we have those suspension springs in position, we can go ahead and grab our motor and reinstall that. We'll set it down in the bottom of the base plate. Once we get that in, we can go ahead and reconnect our wiring harness to the motor, making sure it is clipped in there and locked on. Once we have the wiring harness connected, we can grab a 3/8 bolts and reconnect the washer motor bracket to our base plate. We'll get them started by hand, and then we'll go ahead and grab that ratchet, the 6-inch extension, and the 3/8 socket and snug them down the rest of the way. Once we have those 3/8 motor bracket bolts tight, we can go ahead and grab a 1/4-inch nut driver and reattach our grounds to the motor bracket and the washer cabinet itself. Once we have the ground reattached, we can grab that cover or splash guard for the motor. We'll go ahead and line that up with the holes in the motor housing. We'll go ahead and grab the 5/16 bolts, start those by hand, and then snug them up with the 5/16 nut driver. Now that we have the splash guard secured, we can go ahead and grab our ground wire and clip it into the clip within the splash guard. Alright, so with everything reconnected in the washer, we're ready to reinstall the front cover. We want to drop it down on these two pins, align the left and right side pins as well, pushing the cover upward and aligning the two top holes for the 5/16 bolts. Once we have it aligned, we can go ahead and grab those two 5/16 bolts, start them by hand, and then snug them down with the 5/16 nut driver to hold the front panel in position. Alright, so now that we have the front cover in position, we can go in the back corner and reconnect our pressure switch. We're just going to grab the hose, slide it on. We'll squeeze the hose clamp with our fingers and slide that back into position as well. Give it a little pull, make sure it's on there nice and snug, as if this does pop off, it will leak water. Alright, so now that we have our pressure switch connected so it can properly read how much water is in the tub, we can go ahead and lower the washer top down, making sure it lines with these pins and clicks into position. Alright, so now that we have the top of the washer locked in position, we can go ahead and walk the washer away from the wall. We'll stand it up a little bit as we need to put the new belt on. This is going to be a 21352 belt for this particular machine. So here's the belt that was on the machine. As you can see, it's got some glazing, some hot spots, a couple of cracks, little pieces missing here and there. So we're going to replace this belt with a new one. So we'll unpackage our new one. We're going to start it on the washer pump first, then we'll go on to the motor pulley and then walk it onto the transmission pulley. With the new belt installed, we're ready to lower the washing machine down, slide it back into position, and plug it into the wall outlet so we can run a test load to ensure it works properly. Alright, so here's the clip of the washer with the new snubber ring and suspension springs installed. We have the rags inside that we use to clean up the water and wipe down the areas. You can see how much less the tub assembly is shaking around within the washer cabinet compared to before we replaced the springs and the snubber ring. So that's it. We've just shown you how to replace the snubber ring and the suspension springs in a top-load Maytag Performa washer. Don't forget to click the link in the description, which will take you to our website for a full write-up. You can also click that subscribe button in the middle. On the right, we have a recommended video just for you. And on the left, you'll find our recent upload. Thanks for watching another episode of the DIYguy.net.